Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to VortiX versus LucifroN. This is day number 2 of the $100,000 N4C LAN event from Berlin. I am commentating off-site, which means that I'm receiving a clean feed from the players as you see on the screen, but I will be commentating from my cozy apartment over here. So VortiX versus LucifroN, the two Spanish brothers against each other at the bottom of the Swiss bracket over here. I made some improvements compared to yesterday's broadcast because, well, it wasn't perfect. And now, hopefully, I will be able to get you some nice new stuff. And the first thing that I will have to say is that, well, now I can highlight some stuff because we have a dedicated observer, as we do have a Rus matchup here. So we'll be looking at the huntables. But we do have a dedicated observer in Berlin, which means I'm not controlling the camera. And in some cases, I am sort of unable to point to things that I want to show simply because I'm not the one controlling the camera. So for that, I actually acquired a very nice new tool, and that is the ability to circle stuff. So you should see on the screen that I'm able to mark things, and this is something that we'll be utilizing starting today in these broadcasts. So on the left side, we will have VortiX playing as the Rus in red, and the right side is going to be the French for LucifroN in blue. Rus, a civilization that you didn't frequently see recently in open maps, but if there is any open map where you would see Rus, it is going to be the Highview. And the thing is that Highview has a lot more wolves than ordinary open maps like Arabia or Lipany, and because of that, you can get a lot of bounty for yourself. So on a map like Highview, the bounty indicator that you see over here, that should hit around 270, 300, ideally for a Rus player. So that's what you're looking for a Rus player over here. It's currently at 215, which is still level 1 bounty over here. And as you see, our French player is aging up with the School of Cavalry, whereas on the other side, our Rus player was going up with the... I always confuse the names, it's the Golden Gate. It's still in the morning for me, so I'm a little rusty, but here we go. Golden Gate on the way for our Rus player, he's building that with 5. He also has quite a lot of lumberjacking working, so it's likely that he's going to drop a production building over here, because this is one of the things that we will have to mention with the Rus. The Rus fast castle build used to be extremely powerful, but nowadays it's a little weaker, especially because professional scouts have been nerfed, and probably the civilization that's impacted by that nerf the most is going to be the Rus. So because of that, your fast castle is much slower, as you see a bit of a scuffle here for that wolf. For our blue player, he needs to just shoot this one as the last person. So what you're doing here is pulling that wolf and waiting for the opponent to shoot it. And when the opponent's scout shoots it, you will finish it off. You see the red scout is tempted to shoot it, and blue bringing it back to the town center over here. So it looks like VortiX will get it back, and indeed that's going to give him that wolf taken down. That's going to be an extra 25 gold. He's at 270, and it looks like we will have a professional scouts build coming in here for himself. He is already grabbing the technology, whereas on the other side it looks like we're opening with knights, but a mill is placed by LucifroN. Now one thing that you should note is that we don't have a ton of carcasses underneath the town center. You could see that for a brief moment, which means that this mill could simply be for the berries. It's possible that he wants to play professional scouts, but the thing is that it seems like LucifroN simply doesn't have a ton of food underneath the town center, so he might have to take those berries nonetheless. First knight coming through the map over here, and with the scouts having lower movement speed when carrying carcasses, it's going to be a little difficult to escape from those knights, and that's part of the reason why I like LucifroN's position here quite a bit. He's going to be able to control those carcasses over here as you see the first knight approaching, and this is one of those situations where you will have to drop off the carcasses with your scouts. Looks like the knight ignores the scouts, however, and this is going to be a massive win here for VortiX, being able to bring in 3 carcasses despite having that knight around. He's playing with a couple of spearmen, discouraging those knights from coming in, and you do see the professional scouts technology being researched right now by LucifroN as well, so he's going to contest those huntables, and given the fact that he's got map control with the knights, this is something that you can easily do. At worst, he's just going to ferry in his own deer, which still limits the amount of deer that VortiX has access to. VortiX stunning that knight with the spearman. This is going to discourage this aggression from LucifroN, and with that, VortiX should be able to ferry in that patch of huntables. You see a archer range being dropped by LucifroN as a response to the spearman. For now, he's not taking the berries, he's just fully focused on ferrying in the deer. He made a couple of scouts from that School of Cavalry, and now we're seeing a fast blacksmith from him. So with the French, he would get the attack upgrade for free for his melee units, which means that those knights would be slightly more powerful just by building that blacksmith. But of course, he could also research the ranged attack upgrade for the archers for some extra damage output early on. Looks like he's still trying to keep those scouts at bay, and it has been so far quite successful, I must say, because VortiX was able to pick up one patch of the Huntables, but that was basically it. Nothing else. He's trying to work his way towards the second patch of Huntables, and for now, this is enough food for VortiX, so VortiX doesn't need to be stressed, he's got enough food to operate with. The problem that he's facing is that, obviously, he wants to maximize the efficiency of that Professional Scouts upgrade that he has gotten. Now, the Knights have very low line of sight, so it's difficult for LucifroN to acquire targets. Those Knights, when they go into a stealth forest, they basically have no vision, whereas the Scouts have quite a lot of line of sight, so they can spot those Knights and try to avoid them in the stealth forest out here. Meanwhile, Knights diving in, trying to get some damage down on the Lumberjacks of VortiX, but it's going to be unsuccessful, and we will have the Spearman repelling the attack for the time being. Knight coming in from the left side. We'll probably see some Knights coming in from the right side as well. Two-pronged attack with the Knights, that's what you're focusing on when you're playing the French. You want to make sure that you sort of pull the opponent's villagers, or, well, villagers potentially as well. But Spearman to the left side, and then coming from the right side, pick off one or two vills. First Knight comes in here, Town Center is going to help out a lot, and this Knight could be taken down here. Indeed, the archers, or well, villagers inside that Town Center is just going to fire a volley, and the Knight gets taken down here. So, with that, you are now seeing a second Town Center being added by VortiX, and this is one of the old school ways of playing the Rus. So one of the things that you can do with the Golden Gate is purchase stone. You can do that in 2 transactions. So for the price of 200 gold, you can acquire the 300 stone you need for a second Town Center. This was the first Rus build order that was ever developed. And, oh, Knights, oh, that was a disastrous fight, absolutely horrendous fight over here for LucifroN. As you could see, VortiX was trying to block the escape of that Knight with the scouts. The second Knight gets away, but I don't think that at this point our red player LucifroN has Chivalry, so his Knights won't heal back, at least for the time being. So, the double Town Center Rus play was actually one of the first build orders developed for the Rus. It sort of became obsolete with the Fast Castle being developed and then Horse Archers being so powerful. But this is a very powerful build because you can acquire that second Town Center quite easily, and based on that, you can just build up a quite decent eco lead. Now, VortiX has different ideas. He's preparing a ramp push over here, and this could be dangerous. Because, if you think about it, at this point, the forces of VortiX back at home are minimal. He's got some horsemen, he's got some spears. That's a deadly combination against knights and archers. We've discussed this yesterday. The question is how large his army is going to be. Currently it's 17, but if LucifroN mixes in a couple of knights here to his army and waits for that push, this could be great. I think VortiX has spotted this push coming in and he's realizing that he needs to mass all his forces. His opponent is now on a timer, because if VortiX isn't getting pushed, VortiX is going to pull ahead in the villager department. You can already see that there's a slight villager lead over here, 38 over 36, and that villager gap is just going to widen more and more. So, of course, at this point, the best thing that LucifroN can do is try to push his opponent with battering rams. But it's going to be difficult because knights and archers is not a composition that's capable of beating mass spearmen and horsemen, and that's exactly the unit composition that we're seeing from our defender, VortiX, over here. Professional scouts might be intercepted over here, archers moving in, getting a volley out on the villagers, but won't take down any, as now the horsemen will jump on them, and look at the spearmen flooding the entire map here. It is going to be one knight taken down, the second knight is going to get forced back, and the numbers are just not there for LucifroN. He's getting absolutely massacred over here. I thought he has way better numbers. 2 knights and just a handful of archers. He really seemed unprepared for this battle, and now he's paying the price for this one because the knight gets taken down, and look at that. The spearmen are being pulled back just to make sure that the archers can't take them down, and you're just sending your horsemen to try and deal with those. Spearmen are now being added by LucifroN, but this is a hold. This is a big hold for VortiX. Now that he sees the spearmen, he's going to fall back, but he was able to burn down the ram, so he bought himself precious minutes here. Potentially 2 or 3 minutes have been bought by this defense, and now LucifroN has to rebuild that battering ram. Meanwhile, VortiX is able to start pulling ahead in the villager department. 42 versus 42 is the villager count right now. The French, of course, training villagers faster is something that helps a lot for LucifroN to compensate for the fact that he only has 1 town center. This being said, you do have the horseman once again coming in here. Spearman braces for impact, but the archers are getting picked apart by the horsemen. Once again, a great fight over here for VortiX. The spearmen are able to surround the knights over here. 1 knight gets taken down. The spearman from our red player also gets taken down. And you see that the horsemen have an untouched way to hit all those archers out there. Spearmen are slowly trickling in for LucifroN, but it's a little too late. and he's getting his entire force cleaned up. He taps out of the game. VortiX, dominant game number 1 over here with the Rus. He forces his opponent to make a move. LucifroN had to make a move over here simply because if he doesn't, his opponent will just outboom him. He knew that really well, tried to make the push, but that didn't work out. With that, VortiX is going to take game number 1 over here as he's going to lose his Rus. And on the other side, you're going to see the French being taken away from LucifroN. And Highview falls into the hands of VortiX here. So let's talk a little bit about the tournament rules over here, because this is something that we should clarify. First of all, don't look at the names underneath the maps. That's actually an overlay bug. But the way that this tournament works is that we are at the Swiss stage, which means that the players are not getting eliminated by losing a set. They just fall to the lower parts of the bracket. Yesterday, both VortiX and LucifroN lost their sets. LucifroN is currently the lowest player in the Swiss bracket, and VortiX is the second lowest. And out of this Swiss bracket, the 2 lowest players will get eliminated. So if the group stage ended today, which it doesn't, VortiX and LucifroN would be in elimination spots. Now, one of these players will win here, because someone has to win, and that player will move up in the Swiss brackets, probably getting away from the elimination spot, whereas the other player could potentially fall to a very difficult position. We have 5 rounds for this Swiss bracket, and this is round number 2. So whoever is going to fall down to 0-2 with the sets is going to be in a very tough spot, because then it's difficult to redeem yourself. Not impossible, but 0-2 when you have 5 rounds is a very concerning position to be in. Right now, both of the players are 0-1. LucifroN got defeated by Marine Lord yesterday, and VortiX lost to Beastie QT. So one of these players will definitely rise in the Swiss brackets, the other one will fall even further. For now, VortiX was the more confident player of the two, and we'll wait for game number 2, which will be on the home map of LucifroN, to see how things continue. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 2 in this best of 5 between VortiX and LucifroN. We're going to Dry Arabia. Spawning in on the right side is going to be VortiX playing as the Brule French, and on the left side, LucifroN handling the Holy Roman Empire in red. One very standard open map civilization, the French, being utilized over here by VortiX, whereas on the other side you do have a bit of a curious choice. LucifroN opting to go for the Holy Roman Empire is definitely somewhat surprising, but I do appreciate the fact that he understands the economic power of the Holy Roman Empire. It is not a bad civilization, and the HRE has a lot of options over here. Now, we have seen attempts by players to use Holy Roman Empire as a Delhi counter, so maybe LucifroN expected Delhi to be picked here by the opponent. It's a possibility, but it doesn't really matter at this point, to be honest, because the Holy Roman Empire have a decent matchup against all civilizations, simply because their economy is so powerful that they can get to those Castle Age power units so easily, and then their entire economy is so efficient that they can facilitate very large numbers of units quite easily. On an open map like this, you're thinking about knights mostly, but especially if we are going to see the battle condensed to the middle areas, then you could potentially see a larger focus on the infantry department. Now let's talk about the 2 players' bases over here real quickly, because one of the things that you always have to consider for a French player in particular is going to be the gold mine location. So if you look at this gold mine over here, that's the gold mine we're talking about. This is not a bad gold mine for VortiX by any means, because this gold mine is something that's at the back of the town center. It's not perfect, because attacks from this direction could still cause problems for our blue player over here. So it's not a perfect gold spot, but it's quite decent. You do have 2 forests as well for him, and it's a definite possibility to start walling his base up. This is to a certain extent applicable as well to our red player, so we could see tiny walls come up in case he wants to minimize the effect of those knights that could come in and raid him, because that's the core concept of playing against the French. You want to minimize the damage that those knights can do to your economy. Aachen Chapel right now coming up, that's a beautiful spot for it for our red player. He's going to be able to affect the gold miners, the lumberjacks, and the villagers underneath the town center. That's the perfect position to place the Aachen Chapel at. Very nice positioning from LucifroN. Meanwhile, on the other side, I do expect the School of Cavalry to be dropped by our blue player, and then just go for the good old-fashioned Knights and Archers play. Now, one thing that we could see from our HRA player here is a unit composition that's very similar to what we have seen from VortiX in the previous game using the Rus, sort of Spearmen and Horsemen, because The more and more we're seeing these 1v1 games unfold on these open maps, the more we are seeing that the Spearman Horseman composition is capable of beating this Archer plus Knight composition. Now, we do have a mill coming up here for our blue player, VortiX, which means that Professional Scouts is not an impossible option over here for him. Especially if he's not expecting his opponent to push him early, Professional Scouts could definitely work out. Now, one of the problems that VortiX will be facing with that is that the hunts are pretty far away. If you look at the locations, neither of those hunts are rather close. This one is the closest hunt over here for him, and then the second one is rather far away. The third and fourth ones, so the ones belonging to LucifroN, are next to impossible to take, or at least it would take a lot of time to get there. So, because of this, while VortiX could get some value for that Professional Scouts upgrade, and since he has a discount on it being French, it's definitely something that you can consider. It's not necessarily something that's going to work to amazing efficiency today. He does have some sheep to work with underneath the town center, so dropping that mill is definitely a sign that he's going for a Professional Scouts build over here, and it looks like LucifroN is going to open with a barracks. He knows very well that the first unit that he will encounter on the battlefield could potentially be the Royal Knights, and there's the Professional Scouts coming in. For VortiX, he's still staying on gold, so he will continue to add Knights after this one. But for now, he's popping out the Scouts so he can start picking up the carcasses. One of your decision points when you're playing French in this matchup is when you start adding your Scouts and when you start adding your Knights. Some players open with a Knight and only then add the Scouts. Other players open with Scouts immediately, and only after that they will start pumping out Knights. Looks like, based on the unit queue on the left side that you can see over here, that's a Knight coming out first for our blue player VortiX. Spearman now being added by LucifroN, and indeed he's dropping the stable, so he's preparing that Spearman plus Horseman unit composition here, which could work even better compared to what we have seen from the Rus of VortiX in game number 1. Because the HRE have a very powerful economy, even without Professional Scouts and ferrying in deer, so you could really get going with your economy and also start making a decent amount of units over here. So you could have a decent composition, rather reasonable army numbers with the Horsemen and Spearmen, and also work towards Castle Age, and that could be a deadly combination over here. First Knight roaming through the map over here, trying to get the Lumberjacks damaged or killed, potentially. Not a single Spearman nearby, however, so this guy could actually get some value for himself. Spearman now brace for impact, and with that, the Knight is going to be repelled. Now, our red player, LucifroN, knows very well that the Knights are becoming a real threat. For now, he's protecting his Lumberjacks with Spearmen spread out. His food source is underneath the town center, and he's not mining gold right now, so the only place that he needs to protect are his Lumberjacks, really. He's dropping a mill right now for Professional Scouts. He's running low on food underneath the TC, so he's going to try to ferry in some carcasses himself. He's got the Horseman and Spearman, which is, in theory, the superior unit composition compared to Archers and Knights, so you would expect him to be able to control the map to a certain extent, and utilize that map control to at least pick up his own hunts, which are both on the front, by the way, so as bad as the hunts are for VortiX's Professional Scouts, that's also applicable to LucifroN. Both of the players have to work a lot to get those hunts under their town center. Looks like no economy upgrades have been popped by either player. VortiX with a slight villager lead, thanks to the fact that he's playing the French. But of course, on the other side, you do have players with the Aachen Chapel, so that's going to compensate for the lower villager count. Knights once again trying to charge in here, but they will be repelled by the overwhelming numbers of Spearmen. Now, VortiX sees the Spearmen and Horsemen, and he's gonna have to retreat, because he's going to suffer from the same problems as LucifroN did in the previous game. Knights take a lot of time to build, they're expensive, and the Archers are just not there in significant numbers. There is going to be a second Archer range being dropped right now by VortiX, so he's going to try and respond to this situation by making more Archers, but it all depends on the Horseman numbers from our red player. If you have a sufficient amount of Horsemen, even a good number of Archers won't work out here for VortiX. This being said, so far he's been successful ferrying in the first couple of carcasses to his base, and I would expect something very similar from LucifroN being done here. But look at the food income for LucifroN. That's 688 food per minute, and he's already started transitioning to farms over here, as compared to 460 per minute from VortiX. Now with the carcasses being ferried in as well, the food eco of LucifroN is going to skyrocket, and that is very dangerous for VortiX. Because as I said, I think this Spearman Horseman unit composition can be even more effective with the HRE than the Rus. In the previous game, we have seen that being done with the Rus, but in this one, it's going to be done with the HRE. And the danger of this build here for VortiX, who is playing against it, is that LucifroN could beat him to Castle Age by a massive margin. In fact, if you look at that food count in the top right corner, LucifroN already has 800 food in the bank. In fact, it's an overextension towards food, and he's just now sending villagers to gold. If you look at how many gold villagers he has, which is not something that you can see over here, but for a brief moment you could see it up there, that's at least 7-8 villagers. There it is. 7-8 villagers on that gold mine. So he's scrambling to gather enough gold for Castle Age. He's realizing that he's banked up so much food that he needs to get the gold ASAP to be able to go to Castle. And if he gets to Castle Age, he's going to have his own Lancers, and that's not something that VortiX will have direct answers to. And because the French army is so expensive, the Knights having to make 2 archer ranges as well, it's going to take a lot of time for a French player to get to Castle Age. French, if they make a lot of Knights, is one of the slowest civilizations to Castle Age, whereas the HRE have a juggernaut economy, and now you're seeing why I'm praising this civilization as an open map civ in many cases. Now, the Spearmen abandoned the gold miners, and this is a golden opportunity over here for VortiX to do damage, but LucifroN evacuates the gold mine just in time. He has managed to gather just enough gold so that he can retreat from that gold mine. He's going to lose the first villager of the game, and now you gotta be careful over here if you're LucifroN, because if there's ever a time where you probably want to be careful taking engagements, that is right now, when you are aging up to Castle Age. Looks like it is going to be VortiX committing against this one. He's realizing that his opponent is aging up. He may have even seen that the Regnitz Cathedral being built. The Spearmen brace for impact, however, they did stun the Knights, and that's going to repel this attack over here quite effectively. It's only a matter of seconds until a red player gets to Castle, and then you could see Knights coming out, or could you? Because one thing that LucifroN doesn't have is gold. This is the time to strike for VortiX. He needs to press on to this advantage, because his opponent isn't able to access gold. And it doesn't matter that LucifroN is in Castle Age if he can't access gold. And that's exactly what we're seeing over here from VortiX. He's picking off 2 more villagers from the gold mine, and now you're seeing LucifroN in a troublesome spot. He doesn't have access to gold, which means that even though he's in Castle Age, he can't make a lot of Knights. He's relocating his gold miners to the south over here, currently behind by 9 villagers. VortiX, however, very far away from Castle Age, so if LucifroN is given 1 or 2 minutes to stabilize over here, he's going to be perfectly fine. Archers and Knights now trying to push Lumberjacks from the south over here, and I do see the Siege Engineering upgrade come in for VortiX, which is a sign that he wants to press onto this Feudal Age position right now. He doesn't want to go into Castle. He knows very well that it's just a distant dream right now for him to go into Castle Age, but he might have a small window here to push the opponent, but that window is disturbingly small. We are looking into a situation where LucifroN could hold this with like 3 or 4 Knights being added, because those would be Castle Age Knights against the Feudal Age Knights of the opponent, and supported by those Horsemen and Spears, he should be able to win an engagement against this force. A couple more villagers on the wood line are getting picked off, so LucifroN is down to 30 vills, but it's all about those relics in the Regnitz Cathedral, speaking of which, I don't see a single relic being picked up right now. There is a relic indicator in the corner, so you will see when LucifroN picks up a relic. That's not the garrison relic, that's actually the relics garrisoned or carried by monks. So that's a place to look at when we are observing LucifroN's position relic-wise. Siege Engineering and Chivalry just now finishing for VortiX, so he's ready to push this one. First couple of Knights popping out, however, for our red player. I do believe indeed there is the first Knight. LucifroN is probably unaware of that ram being built right now because he doesn't have a scout or a tower nearby to spot it. But he probably suspects that there is a push coming. The reason why he's suspecting it is because his opponent is not aging up. And if your opponent is not aging like this, then it has to be a full Feudal Age push. You see another Prelate queued up on the far right side. That is going to be the one dispatched to pick up the relics. The other one is still sitting inside the Aachen Chapel out there boosting the economy. So LucifroN didn't want to sacrifice that Prelate, or at least the boost that it's providing by having it garrisoned in the Aachen Chapel, for the relic. He plays this one patiently. Here comes the push. And it's going to be all about the patience game for LucifroN. He probably needs to sacrifice the Aachen Chapel for the time being and just wait for the Knights to pile up. He needs 3, 4, 5 Knights to take this fight over here. Looks like he's ready to fight, however, because he's got the sufficient numbers, and that's exactly the type of fight that you want to see here for LucifroN. He's charging him with the cavalry. VortiX doing a nice job picking off the Spearmen, but he doesn't have a direct answer to the Horsemen and the Castle Age Knights. That's the big problem over here. VortiX is salvaging most of this fight over here by picking off the Spearman, but still, he's in full retreat mode. He's trying to use his Knights to absorb the charge of those red Knights over here, but as you see, at this point, all you gotta do if you are LucifroN is just try to take down as many archers as you can with your own Knights, but it looks like the numbers were not sufficient for LucifroN. As I said, patience is gonna be key here, because you have to take one decisive fight over here, and now he's getting pushed back into his base. He managed to buy himself some time, however, because he's bringing in relic number 1 as we speak. And he managed to take down one battering ram as well. That was sort of not escorted by the units, and the villagers just burnt it down. Here comes the push, however. I think LucifroN knows very well that he's going to have to repel this attack, and then he's got the game, because there is no chance for VortiX to get to Castle Age here at this point, or at least I would be very surprised if he got there. Nice move to attack the houses here for VortiX. He's realizing that the best way to prevent the opponent from getting any kind of army out is just to get him housed. Emergency repairs were popped by LucifroN over here, so that house will be repaired for a time being. And once again, you got 6 Knight charging in here, and this is exactly the type of fight that you want. Even the scouts are being pulled, which will be great to just absorb some damage over here from the archers, absorb some hits from those knights, and now those Castle Age knights are working to great effect over here. The red army is cleaning up all of those archers, and now VortiX is in full retreat. He's banking up resources, he's thinking about getting to Castle Age. Remember, he still has an 18 villagers lead, so he has a considerable eco advantage over his opponent, but LucifroN is likely going to be able to secure multiple relics over here, probably 3 that he needs in that Ragni's Cathedral, and now you're talking about Castle Age Knights versus Feudal Age Knights still. So this is LucifroN's window to get some raiding damage going. There is the second prelate moving out for a second relic. Rams also went down over here, which were costly investments for our blue player, and as you see, there was a scout from VortiX scouting the base of our blue player over here, which means that he is looking for targets. LucifroN wants to see where exactly to go with his knights, and it looks like he's going to meet the enemy in the middle of the battlefield. He's going to engage over there, and indeed, he's going to see the spearmen come out. He's going to have to retreat against this one, but he has another group of knights to the south of this position, and that group of knights is being sent towards the base of VortiX. This is going to be the first raid that LucifroN will do in this entire game, I do believe. Looks like he actually grouped up his knights. He retreated into his base. Castle Age on the way for VortiX, and it looks like LucifroN isn't going to be able to capitalize on his Castle Age advantage after all, because as things stand, VortiX will be able to get to Castle himself, and that once again shifts the balance back into the favor of VortiX, because VortiX is going to have better knights in Castle Age with the French than the Holy Roman Empire, plus the bigger thing, spearmen. And there is no answer right now from LucifroN to the spearmen. He could add his own Holy Roman Empire men-at-arms, but that takes some time, especially if you want to get the maces upgrade as well for them, so that they're effective against knights. And I don't think that time is something that LucifroN has a lot of, because at this point, this is his biggest concern. VortiX has 29 army, as opposed to only 18 belonging to LucifroN. Now, LucifroN is getting up to 3 stables over here, so he's going to pump out knights all day, all night. And if he's the initiator of these fights, if he's the one forcing the engagements by raiding the opponent, then he can sort of nullify the effect of his inferior numbers, or the fact that he doesn't have a direct answer to the spears. So he has to be the initiator of these fights. He has to start raiding and force his opponent to stay within his base, while he's going to add the men-at-arms that will be capable of dealing with the archers and the spearmen. Here come the knights, but as you see, VortiX is ready to fight this one. For now, he's just sitting in his base, but keep in mind, as long as he's sitting in his base, that gives a window for LucifroN to pick up relics. LucifroN is currently at 2, and the other 3 relics are somewhat difficult to access. You probably want to go for the leftmost relic over here, because this is probably the safest one to pick up for our HRA player, or maybe this one, but definitely not the one in the middle. That's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to pick up. Knights charging in here. This is going to be the first 2 villagers being killed by our red player over here. I think there was only 2 taken down for a price of 1 knight. That's a reasonable engagement over here for LucifroN. He's going to call off his forces. And on the backside of VortiX's base, you could also see 2 knights moving in. They try to find an angle, and look at that. It looks like the relic from the middle of the map was yoinked while the fight was happening. VortiX was distracted for a brief moment, and he wasn't able to spot that monk picking up the relic and taking it away. That's going to be the 3rd relic under the control of LucifroN, and there is 2 more relics that are still rather accessible, so he could potentially build a monastery and place relic number 4 and 5 in it. I don't think that we have a monastery from our blue player VortiX, so he's not really going to start picking up those relics himself, and it looks like it's just going to be archers. Knights and archers will be the unit composition here for LucifroN as well. Currently he's behind by 16 villagers, which sounds intimidating, but we have to keep in mind he's got the Aachen Chapel, he's got the Ragni's Cathedral. Loses 1 knight here to the spearman, and now he sees the veteran spearman appearing on the battlefield. Archers are being massed as we speak, but the numbers aren't spectacular right now for LucifroN, so VortiX might have a window here. Spears, archers, and knights, all with Castle Age upgrades, against LucifroN's forces, who doesn't have a ton of archers, so you could just see those blue spearmen charging in on the cavalry, and that's exactly what they do. This is not a fight that LucifroN wants to take. The spearmen will take down those red knights over here, and the archers not really impacting the battle over here for VortiX, but as you see, those spears are just working wonders right now. Most of them are now taken down by the archers from LucifroN, but most of the forces here for LucifroN will be cleaned up, I do believe, and as the spearman reinforcements trickle in, those red knights are disappearing from the battlefield, or are they? It looks like LucifroN is having a rather easy time reinforcing this battle, and I have to say I maybe underestimated the strength of his forces over here. He's reinforcing this battle quite rapidly from the triple stables and 2 archer ranges, and now our blue player, VortiX, is on a full retreat mode. He's got the guild hole, which means that he's banking up resources in it. We'll have to see when he pulls those off, and look at that, 2 knights coming in from the south as well. He's trying to intercept that force that is retreating currently. As the spearmen hit the battlefield though, LucifroN is going to have to call off his knights. This was a great engagement for him, however. And keep in mind that behind this one, he's got a juggernaut economy, already setting up a very effective farming eco around that Aachen Chapel, which is also going to help. Looks like we had 1 knight getting to the lumberjacks of VortiX over here, losing 1 villager in the process was VortiX, and now LucifroN is going to start pushing ahead. I wonder if he's thinking about potentially taking that sacred site. Meanwhile, VortiX was mining stone, so I assume he wanted to drop a keep somewhere. The question is where exactly that keep will be placed. This is going to be spotted by our red player, LucifroN, so he knows very well that the keep is a possibility. In fact, he sees this keep coming up here. He's going to try and stop this one. Pushing in with the archers is LucifroN. There is quite a lot of spearmen over here. The spearmen do brace against the charge of the cavalry, and right now, VortiX is taking down the archers of LucifroN over here. LucifroN trying to focus down the spears over here as VortiX pulls at least 15-20 villagers to make that castle happen, and the castle will go up. It was a great fight for VortiX. He was able to use the spearmen against the knights, and then his archers just took down the archers from LucifroN. Up north, you're seeing some walls come up for VortiX. He knows very well that the longer the game goes, the more likely the cavalry raids will become. So you need to at least contain the movement of the opponent and try to prevent raids coming to the back of your economy, because as you see, LucifroN is detaching 4 knights from the main army and he's going to send them over for a raid. So that's the reason why VortiX is making those walls out there. One of the knights will just run into his death into that castle fire. Now stables are being placed around that castle, and that's going to help a lot for VortiX to sustain his cavalry production, because with the French, you would have those stables being affected by the castle's influence, and that's going to decrease the cost of cavalry out there. And Olcero's upgrade just now on the way for VortiX. As you could see, another knight trying to get the lumberjacks. No success over there for LucifroN. So the villager difference is still 12, but as I said, farming eco set up for LucifroN with the Aachen Chapel boosting it, 3 relics in the Regnitz Cathedral, and he could pick up the other 2. There's nothing preventing him from doing that. I'm actually a little surprised that he didn't even move towards those, because that's still 200 extra gold per minute if you garrison them into monasteries. For now, it looks like we're going to have LucifroN healing up his archers, and now he's switching to the barracks. This is where it could be a little concerning for the French, because the French, at this point, they're not really set up to deal with the men-at-arms flood of the Holy Roman Empire. And men-at-arms with 200 maces would massacre all the spears, they would take down the knights, and they would also take down the archers. And look at that, the Palace of Swabia is now being dropped by LucifroN. He was behind the villagers the whole game, but that will very soon change. He's leveraging the fact that he's got a discount on that building, so it takes less resources to age up to Imperial, as the knights will also potentially run past those walls over here. Spearmen trying to adjust to this location, and it looks like LucifroN is going to retreat. He sees the spearman, he didn't want to risk losing his knights, and in the end, he's going to get away with all 5 of those knights over there. So that is Imperial Age, and the reason why that's very powerful is not just because you're going to have extra villager production here for LucifroN for basically no cost, but it's also powerful because now you will have Imperial Age upgrades, and I do believe that we're about to see some Imperial Age men-at-arms hit the field here. Now, one of the things that the French can do against that is Arbaletrie, but it's going to be difficult, because you will need to make a complete transition to Arbaletrie, which will take some time, and I do believe that LucifroN has been massing some infantry for some time, and his opponent is not ready to fight those yet. Looks like the knights will charge in here, get 1 archer killed, but in the end, they won't lose any of their own numbers. This is going to be a bit of an annoyance for LucifroN to deal with, and now he's realizing that he should start walling up as well. It's an open space over here, so it's going to take a lot of effort to wall this one. but it's better to be VOD than to just die to constant raids. Imperial Age is in for LucifroN, and on the other side, you see VortiX has basically no resource bank to go up to Imperial Age with. So this is the troublesome spot, because now you're getting a massive power spike, and I see Landsknechte. That's a little surprising over here from LucifroN, because Landsknechte would die pretty badly to archers. Now, if he's preemptively thinking about his opponent switching to Arbaletier, it's a great move. If he is assuming that his opponent is switching to Arbaletier, it's the perfect move. But if VortiX stays on archers, then it's terrible, because the archers are a direct counter unit to the Landsknechte. Here come the knights once again. This is not a fight that you want to take if you are VortiX, but he might not have a choice. He knows very well that he needs to fight very soon, because he has no tools of getting to Imperial. And if he doesn't fight right now, his opponent will get his Imperial Age technologies. The Landsknechte will be very effective against the Spearmen, and since we don't have a ton of archers here for VortiX, it looks like the Landsknechte will get away with this battle. Knights will retreat. You're seeing Spearmen also being added in large numbers now for LucifroN. It's going to be great against all of those Knights. The question is, how many archers are we going to see from our blue player VortiX? Because if he starts adding Knights, both the Spearmen and the Landsknechte will die very easily with that. For now, VortiX is going to try and raid, and that's the best way of playing this one. He knows that he needs time above all. He needs to delay his opponent's push as much as possible, and the best way to avoid a push from your opponent is to try and raid him, force him to defend, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Knights are now coming in on the Lumberjacks. Remember, every single villager that's lost for LucifroN is way less significant than any villager lost from VortiX, because LucifroN can replace them very easily with the Palace of Swabia. But still, you will have to address this situation. You will have to clean up those raids, and that's exactly what LucifroN will have to address. And now you see VortiX tearing apart his economy from multiple directions. And of course, it's rather easy to replace those villagers, but it doesn't mean that if you keep losing villagers, you will be in a good position. Because, of course, every time you lose a villager, you have to make a new one, send it to work, and that is going to take a lot of effort from you to just try and get those back to work. Knights are slowly getting cleaned up on the northern side, the Spearmen closing the distance, but VortiX is doing an exceptional job just delaying his opponent, buying himself as much time as humanly possible. Behind this one, the villager counts are now evening out, LucifroN using that Palace of Swabia to great effect. But the key thing is going to be when or if VortiX is able to get to Imperial Age. He's doing the right thing right now. Keep raiding, and that is going to be the Red Palace coming in. The key defensive landmark, something that's very difficult to push, and it's also going to have quite a lot of archer ranges surrounding that. So it looks like the question has been answered. VortiX is going up to Imperial. He's losing all these knights over here, which is obviously far from ideal, but he's willing to sacrifice these for the sake of buying himself time to get up to Imperial. And once he gets to Imperial, we're once again even Steven. Because the French cavalry, once we get to Imperial with the Royal Bloodlines upgrade, that's going to be an absolute juggernaut. You're seeing bombards appear on the battlefield. That is the power spike that the Holy Roman Empire get once they get to Imperial. Not only are they having the Palace of Swabia, they will have artillery, high quality, large damage output artillery available to take down buildings with. And that's one of the reasons why HRE can be very dangerous with this fast Imperial. They can get those Imperial Age units, like the elite upgrades, and most importantly, those Imperial Age siege weapons, the bombards on the battlefield. But look at that, the Red Palace is going to discourage any kind of aggression that's not supported by siege. And that's the big thing. The Red Palace's firepower is immense. There is no way that any kind of unit survives underneath that building for long. So you see, a volley comes out and those Landsknechte are getting absolutely slain over here. Look at that. Bit of a miss micro over here by LucifroN. In just a blink of an eye, he loses 6 or 7 units out there to the castle fire. That is the type of firepower that you are looking at when you look at the Red Palace. And it also has a large range as well. So it's taking down units left and right. And you see, LucifroN has to be very cautious because those are expensive units that he's losing. A single Landsknecht is a 50 food and 100 gold. So losing 3 or 4 of them is a ton of gold down the drain. Speaking of which, the other 2 relics have still not been picked up by either side. Looks like our red player LucifroN is going to realize that he's gonna have no tools to push the middle, so he will try to push the flank over here. Defensive castle is being built right now by VortiX. The numbers are looking way better, however, for LucifroN. 82 versus 40. With some mangonels, VortiX could even things out because his opponent is basically using a full infantry army, so 3 or 4 mangonels could wipe this out, but he will need something that deals with the cannon. Otherwise, he would just lose the mangonels to those cannons very easily. Infantry will burn their way through the walls in a matter of seconds. Castle being rushed up as we speak. I don't think it has boiling oil. If it has, that's going to help immensely against all that infantry. And do I see scouts being added? I think I do see scouts being added by VortiX. Those will be his cheap throwaway torch units. He's at 163 population, whereas his opponent is at 200. And I do see some Arbaletry now being added as well. That's not going to help against Spears and the Landsknechte here. Cannon now firing away on that keep, and we are going to see a University being added. Now you're seeing the cavalry charge in on the bombards, however, infantry will readjust, and you see that there is no chance right now for VortiX to fight this one. The archers will do their best against all that infantry, but you need some more firepower over here. Castle being repaired right now, but 2 bombards. Having just so much firepower, they will just take down that keep unless the bombards are gotten rid of. And you see, when VortiX's army is mainly consisting of scouts, you know he's in trouble. And this is something that LucifroN is realizing. LucifroN is realizing that there's a chance for him to push even deeper because his opponent is low on numbers. There is some Arbaletry, but those don't do well against either the Landsknechte or the Spearmen. And now on those clustered up units, you're going to see those Landsknechte working to great effect. Scouts trying to jump on the cannon over here, but the Spearmen will just massacre them. Scouts don't have a ton of HP. They might take down one bombard, but it doesn't matter because VortiX is going to tap out. He knows really well that that infantry is just going to overrun his base, and LucifroN guiding the Holy Roman Empire to a victory here in game number 2. Oh, it warms my heart to see the HRE win. I'm not going to lie, I'm a big HRE fanboy, and I have to say that this was a well-played game here by LucifroN. His idea was that, okay, in this previous game, I have seen that the Horseman plus Spearman unit composition is capable of beating the Knights and Archers. So I'm going to use the same unit composition, but with a civilization that has such a good economy that I'm almost guaranteed to beat my opponent to Castle. I beat him to Castle, I start making my own Knights, that way I can repel a Knights plus Archers aggression, utilize the map control I gain by defeating the enemy's forces in a key battle just after reaching Castle Age, utilize this map control to pick up the relics, and then just build onto that already existing lead. And he did just that. He got to Imperial Age, and for that reason, VortiX had to scramble to get to Imperial, and VortiX had to sacrifice a ton of resources for that, and he just wasn't able to afford army. Whereas his opponent, with the farming eco set up in the influence radius of the Aachen Chapel, he was able to afford a large number of infantry units, and there was just no direct answer from VortiX. If VortiX had time, he would have been able to turn this around, simply by having some mangonels added, like 2 or 3 mangonels supported by 2 or 3 springles that snipe down the bombards would be a decent response, at least for the time being. Of course, LucifroN could add his own culverins to take down the mangonels with, but that would buy some time for VortiX. But ultimately, 3 relics for HRE, plus of course, after mid-Castle Age, VortiX wasn't really able to hit the economy of LucifroN, and LucifroN got away with the Pass of Swabia. He was able to mass large amount of infantry, and he takes the win over here. So the scoreline is now even. On Dry Arabia, LucifroN takes the win, and LucifroN is not going down easily over here, that's for sure. We'll have to see how things go in game number 3, which will be on the home map of VortiX. Actually, what's up with the maps? We might actually have them flipped. Yep, we do have them flipped, apologies for that. So, LucifroN's home map was Dry Arabia and Mongolian Heights, and on the other side, Hillandale and Lipany. So we're going to Hillandale or Lipany here as the home map of VortiX approaches for game number 3. Versus LucifroN, we are going into game number 3 on Hillandale, and we do have a somewhat unconventional civilization matchup over here. I do believe it's Hillandale, although the map has not been shown to us. We're seeing a POV right now. But we do have VortiX playing as the blue Delhi Sultan, and indeed the map is Hillandale. LucifroN picking the Rus for this map, a quite unconventional civilization selection, but a quite intriguing one in many ways. We've talked about the flexibility of the Rus, and I've been praising that for a long time. Despite the fact that the fast castle build has been nerfed from the Rus, it is still a powerful civilization. It's capable of doing a decent amount of feudal age aggression. It's capable of getting a very nice fast castle going as well, even after nerfing professional scouts. Last but not least, it's also capable of going for a 2 town center build, like we have seen in game number 1. So I'm curious to see what LucifroN has on his mind. Delhi, however, is extremely difficult not to crack. It's one of the best civilizations for this map. It's also a civilization that, to a certain extent, is a counter pick to the meta pick here, which is the HRE. Now, LucifroN already used up his Holy Roman Empire over here, so it was basically obvious for VortiX that he's not going to encounter the Holy Roman Empire here. He still decided to go with Delhi simply because Delhi is a very powerful map on this, or very powerful civilization on this map. Regardless, it's going to be an intriguing matchup, not something that you see every day. In fact, I'm not even sure when was the last time I saw Rus versus Delhi as an open map matchup, or even as a closed map matchup, to be honest. Looks like LucifroN is going to be quite successful finding sheep on the northern side of the map, as he's also going to aggro one of the wolves. We don't see the bottom left corner right now from LucifroN's POV, so we don't know how much bounty he has collected, but if he took down his own hunt and he took down the hunt to the northern side of his base, and he also managed to aggro 2 wolves, that should be around 200-ish bounty. So he's likely going to get to 250. Looks like he didn't take down that hunt just yet. On the other side, you could see for a brief moment that VortiX was taking down the hunt close to his base, so that's not going to be accessible by any means for LucifroN to take down. Looking at the relic spawns, those are rather even, slightly favoring LucifroN probably, but of course it's going to be the sacred site locations that will be extremely relevant for this game. One of them being all the way up north, the other two in between two players over here, very much spread out across the map. You see, there's basically one in the middle, and one on the northern side, one on the southern side. In many cases, the sacred sites spawn closer to each other on Hill and Dale, making it easier for Delhi to capture and hold all of those, or at least 2 out of the 3. But in this case, it's going to be difficult to control all 3 of those. It's even going to be difficult to control 2, simply because the distance between them is so great. Dome of Faith right now on the way for VortiX as his Feudal Age landmark, and I would expect the Golden Gate to be dropped by LucifroN on the right side. Still no sign of his bounty count. It looks like we're going to have efficient production come in for our Delhi player, as one would expect. That's the usual way of playing Delhi. And we do have, oh boy, 3 wolves over here. Aggroing all 3 of these would be a big win for either side, to be honest. For LucifroN, he would get 75 bounty from those, and for VortiX, he would deny 75 bounty from his opponent, and it looks like LucifroN is going to just miss out on this one. Not only is he missing out on the sheep in this side, he's also missing out on quite a lot of wolves. He's trying to salvage the situation by trying to at least take down one of those wolves, and if the scout of VortiX goes a little too far away from those wolves, they might even de-aggro. But the key thing right now for our blue player, VortiX, is to just take down the wolf when it's actually at low HP. That's actually a misclick. He needs to land the last shot. And you see that the scouts are dancing around right now. It's all about that, landing that last shot, and this is a possibility now for VortiX to do it. He's going to turn around, take it down. That's exactly what he needs to do. Land the last shot. You want to wait until your opponent takes the second to last shot, and then you want to finish the wolf off with your last. And that's exactly what LucifroN did. With that, VortiX is able to deny 3 wolves from his opponent. LucifroN still got to 260 bounty, so he doesn't have to be very concerned about his position. He has unlocked the level 2 bounty, but obviously 75 extra bounty would have been immensely helpful for him. He is going with the professional scouts, as you could see for a brief moment, whereas on the other side, we're seeing a barracks being dropped. And I would expect the good old-fashioned Delhi build to be used over here. Archers, Spearmen, or potentially Horsemen, Spearmen, and just try to go for the sacred sites. Of course, Sanctity is yet to be researched for the Delhi players, so he doesn't need to rush out the scholars just yet. But he's probably going for the sacred sites. The main question is what LucifroN is up to, and whether or not he goes for a 2-town center build, or some Feudal Age aggression, or potentially just a fast castle. If he goes for a fast castle, that could be an intriguing choice, because horse archers could actually work to a decent efficiency against the spearman plus horseman build. It's a little tricky, and part of the reason why I think that VortiX has to go spearman and archers is because in case his opponent goes for horse archers, mass foot archers would beat that very easily. Looks like we have a building cancelled and replaced with another. It's going to be a stable, so we are seeing spearmen and horsemen being used as a combination. An archer range was dropped by our red player, LucifroN, so he's going to start popping out a couple of archers over here. First scout running across the map over here. It's going to be easy to bring in one patch of huntables for LucifroN. He might not even bother picking those up and just make a drop-off building next to them. However, there is a patch of huntables up north. It looks like he is ferrying in the carcasses from next to his archer ranges. Looks like a stable will be added as well, so it's going to be horsemen and archers for LucifroN. He's still banking up a ton of food over here. And he has a patch of huntables on the north that's difficult to deny for VortiX. So VortiX would have to walk a lot to deny the hunt in the northern side of the map. So I would think that LucifroN will have access to that. Sanctity about a minute and a half away, so you will see the scholars slowly moving out towards those sacred sites. Given the fact that these sacred sites are quite far away from the base of VortiX, I would think that he's going to start marching out with them. Of course, he wants to keep those scholars in that mosque as long as possible, simply because he wants to minimize the amount of time it takes to research Sanctity. And only once it's 95 or 98% done will he move out with the scholars to start capping the sacred sites. Looks like he's also using his map control that he has managed to obtain by having some spears and horsemen on the battlefield, and you could see for a brief moment that he's expanding towards the berries on the south. I kinda like that, although it's a risky move. One thing that you gain with it is that you are going to be able to take berries that might be inaccessible in the future. Because once we get to Castle Age, we're going to see a lot more units running across the map, so it's going to be a lot more dangerous to just go for the berries. Right now, these are rather safe, simply because the opponent doesn't have a lot of army, and it's somewhat unlikely that he will commit most of his army to just probe the berries at the south. In the future, those berries will be a lot more contested than they are right now, and this is going to give some extra food as well for VortiX to work with. Looks like the horseman and the spearman will actually try and contest that hunt on the northern side of the map. The carcass will be dropped by LucifroN trying to retreat into his base. He's got a horseman and an archer coming as well to try and react to this one. Army numbers, however, 15 to 11 in the favor of VortiX. It's a little easier right now for LucifroN to reinforce his army inside his base, but of course all VortiX wants to do is make sure that LucifroN stays within his base, because if he can accomplish that, he's gonna be able to control at least one, potentially two, or even three sacred sites. Sacred site in the middle is being captured, and you see a scholar moving to the south as well. And I do believe that the blue dot we are seeing moving north is going to be a scholar trying to capture the third sacred site. Even if you just hold them for a short amount of time, it pays off. So even if you can't maintain control of all three of those, you're gonna be able to leverage the advantage of having it even just for half a minute. You could see for a brief moment that that scholar was actually outside the range of that sacred site, but let's look at more important things. This is a battle going on. We do have the horsemen charging in here, and this is the problem with the horseman archer composition. We've talked about this one. Horsemen and spearmen is just so effective as a unit comp, and we have been seeing that returning more and more. And of course, the efficient production of the Delhi is just very dangerous here, because the two players are making horsemen, but the Delhi player has a much easier time making horsemen. He's able to just spam those out with the efficient production, whereas on the other side, it is just basically one stable, one archer range. Knights are being added, but those knights cannot be healed back up, so unlike the French knights, any damage that they take is pretty much permanent in Feudal Age. And as you see, the army numbers are much greater right now for VortiX, and he's using that to start the Sacred Site countdown. In the bottom left corner of the screen, you can see the Sacred Site countdown going off, but instead VortiX decides to charge in here, and it looks like the archers are not focusing down the spearmen. The spearmen are getting some beautiful hits on those knights. Look at that. Knights on the north, knights on the south, they're all being taken down by the spears. It looks like LucifroN isn't microing this fight at all, because those archers weren't focusing the spears. There is still 3 spearmen alive in this battle, and they have been massacring those cavalry units for such a long time. A great battle here for VortiX. Could be a game-losing battle for LucifroN, because his entire force is now wiped out, and he's up against 3 sacred sites. Even if he decaps one of those, his opponent is going to be sitting on 2, and you can already see the result of that. 540 gold per minute for VortiX. He is already sitting at a bank of 800, so he can make a market, he can start balancing out his economy, and just start pumping out even more army, built on the fact that he already has the sacred sites providing him an insane amount of resources. It was all about the fact that he was able to control those sacred sites and its efficient production at a great effect. You're able to just flood out units much easier than your opponent, and you also have to consider something else. You do have the berries at the south here for VortiX, and that's giving him an insane amount of extra food income. And that's the reason why I like that move to move out there. You want to maintain this feudal pressure, and as long as you maintain that pressure, your opponent is stuck inside his base, which gives you the freedom of going for the berries at the south. And those sacred sites still remain under the control of VortiX. He balanced out his eco. He's now at 1,000 food in the bank, 400 gold. That's gonna be a Castle Age attempt from him. And if he gets to Castle, he will start picking up the relics. He's going to start adding some men-at-arms, most likely. And I would be surprised not to see some barracks already being dropped by VortiX over here in preparation to go for men-at-arms. 2 scouts are sent south to try and decap that sacred site. That's a nice move over there. Or the scouts can be repelled by just 1 or 2 horsemen out here. Instead, it looks like LucifroN is going to try and push the middle. You see 1 horseman trying to fight off those 2 scouts at the bottom. At least try to maintain control over that sacred site as long as possible. Up north, the site was decapped by 1 knight over here. Down south, it's going to be under the control of VortiX for some more time, and he's on the way to Castle Age with the House of Learning. For now, the sacred site in the middle is being decapped, but I love the move of VortiX of pulling back his forces. He knows very well that he doesn't need to fight, and in fact, he shouldn't fight this one. He just needs to leverage his castle age advantage. Now, LucifroN is up to castle age as well, and that's not something that I saw coming. Of course, he's got the Golden Gate, so he can balance out his eco very effectively, and he has a good food eco with the Rus having the bounty level 2. He fared in some carcasses. He does have a decent food eco if he has a tower boosting his lumberjacks. So, there is no tower apparently. So it was only the hunt and of course the Golden Gate being used to great effect. Archers getting caught off guard over here, and this is a nice little win here for VortiX. He's able to take down what could be 2, 3, 4 archers maybe. He takes down 2, and then his spearmen brace for impact, stunning the cavalry, and that's going to be one more knight taken down, and the second knight could also going down here. The spearmen bracing and stunning the cavalry cost 2 knights over there for LucifroN, and those are expensive knights to replenish. LucifroN is up to castle age faster than his opponent actually, which is a quite decent accomplishment over here, but still, VortiX is going to be able to capture the sacred site on the north. He killed the knight that was guarding the sacred site, and now he's capping it. And as I said, relics is soon going to be a thing here for the Delhi. Now, the Rus can also pick up the relics very effectively here. Keep in mind, they do have the warrior monks available to capture relics with. But you first need to start making warrior monks for that, whereas on the other side, the Delhi player already has a lot of scholars. So the Delhi can start picking up relics the moment they get to castle age, whereas the Rus player still has to make a couple of those warrior monks to do that. Looks like 2 sacred sites currently under the control of VortiX over here, as we do have some men-at-arms being mixed in by our Rus player. Other side, it looks like we just have light infantry here, archers, spearmen, and horsemen. No heavy cavalry, no heavy infantry whatsoever, which could be concerning for a player that's about to face dozens of men-at-arms. Well, not really dozens right now, it's just going to be a few, but still, you will need to find the answer to those. Looks like we have 1 relic for each player. You can see that at the top of the screen, as once again, the Scholar is going to try and capture the sacred site. Knight, Spearman, and Archer group now moving in. The Archer numbers seem to be a lot better over here for VortiX, so he's happy to take this fight over here, and indeed he will. The Scholar is getting focused down by the spears, but it also means that the blue cavalry is not being hit by the Spearman, and once again, VortiX is able to surround LucifroN over here with the cavalry and takes a decisive win. This is not the first time that he's taking a decisive win over here, and you could see the headset being taken off here by LucifroN. It looks like the cameras are still a little off sync compared to the gameplay, and that is going to be a big win here for VortiX. Delhi, to a certain extent, has become the meta pick on this map, and you can see why. Rus was a somewhat surprising civilization selection, I would say, from LucifroN, but in the end, it's just a Delhi power. It's very difficult to match up with the ability to flood out units very fast because of the scholars boosting your buildings, and also the fact that they have such a good food income from the berries. They can build their army production on that food income from the berries and leverage that to gain map control, and using that map control they take the sacred sites, so now they have a good food eco and good gold eco, and they can use that to get to castle age fast, get a technology advantage, while also making large amounts of army. The Rus would have a very tough matchup over here. We will never know what exactly the plan was for LucifroN. Based on the fact that he hit castle age faster than his opponent, I would assume that his original plan was just to play some sort of fast castle-ish play here, but it didn't really work out. The meta pick, the Delhi, take the win over here, and with that, VortiX moves into a match point position as we will move to LucifroN's home map in game number 4. Welcome back to VortiX versus LucifroN. We are going to Mongolian Heights with VortiX having a 1-game lead over LucifroN. Spawning in red colors on the right side of the map, we will have LucifroN playing as the Mongols, and on the left side, we will have VortiX playing as the English in blue. 2 traditional civilizations for this map. Mongols known for their ability to potentially deny docks from the opponent by burning it down early. It's a very powerful civilization because they do have a great efficiency in their economy, and given the fact that this map is fairly well defendable, this is a position where the Mongols can facilitate a fast castle or a semi-fast castle approach. On the other side is the English civilization, which in many ways is a counterpick to something like the Delhi or something like the Rus on this map, although Rus has been used by both players, so it's not really going to be a possibility, but LucifroN still has his Delhi available. So because of that, it's a possibility that VortiX tried to counterpick that, but in general, English is a great civilization to counterpick any kind of fishing attempt, because the longbows are able to pick off the fishing ships from great distance. Also, English are a pretty decent civilization to put up a lot of early aggression. But in this particular matchup, you gotta like the Mongols a little bit better, because the Mongols will be able to do everything that the English can, just slightly better. If we are talking about archers, like longbows popped out for the English, you can match that with superior numbers for the Mongol player. If we are talking about something else, like potentially man-at-arms, for example, for the English, the Mongols have their answers to that as well. They can make siege on the battlefield, to add mangonels, they can add their own crossbows, of course. They do have a strong cavalry play. So the Mongols is a very good all-around civilization. It's a difficult matchup for the English. But if there's any map where it's a somewhat reasonable matchup for the English, I would say it is this one. Now, as you see, VortiX is going to age up to Feudal Age with the Council Hall, with no dock being placed, whereas on the other side, LucifroN is going to delay his Feudal Age by adding a dock. Because adding a dock is always something that delays your Feudal Age, but it's going to pay off in the next 3 or 4 minutes. And this is something that could make a semi-fast castle approach from LucifroN even easier. Now, his OVO is at the back of his base, which is going to be difficult to burn down. It's not really a big deal right now for LucifroN that it's far away, simply because the English are not really known as a civilization that can burn down OVOs easily. Because they do open with the longbows, they do have low mobility, so it takes a lot of time to get there. Longbows won't be able to burn it down at all. You would need spearmen to do that, and that's going to take, once again, a lot of time to get there. So that OVO being all the way at the back and quite far away from the town center isn't really a big deal right now for LucifroN. His town center is close to a gold mine and the lumber, or a forest, and that's immensely helpful. This is something I mentioned yesterday when we were discussing this, and the key thing here is that by having that town center close to the wood line and the gold mine as well, you don't need to make a gur. And that is something that saves you a ton of wood, which is immensely helpful in a situation like this where you want to spend your wood on making fishing ships, making a dock, and of course you also want to drop that OVO as soon as possible. So as you see, we do have an OVO out for LucifroN already. He's gathering quite a lot of stone, and he was also able to drop that dock quite early. The Khan is harassing the villagers here a tiny bit, not something that at this point VortiX has to be worried about. He's chopping wood quite aggressively, which means that we're going to see quite a lot of longbows popping out early. In fact, he's banking up a lot of wood already, so it's possible that we are going to see barracks being dropped as he's hitting Feudal Age, especially if he's expecting horsemen to arrive from the opponent. For a brief moment, you could see VortiX's scout trying to do some damage on those fishing ships, but that's going to be minimal. I don't think it's really going to be a factor at this point. LucifroN is just now going up to Feudal Age as LucifroN leaves the scouting falcon behind as he leaves the base of his opponent. And there is the stable being dropped right next to the OVO, double horsemen being produced. LucifroN is using one of the most underappreciated features of the Mongols, the ability to make horsemen in Dark Age as a unit that will be used in Feudal. Because sometimes you see players making horsemen in Dark Age and trying to attack with them. That usually doesn't work out because the opponent has the safety of his town center. But one thing that you can do with those horsemen is that you can already start massing them, and when you get to Feudal Age, you get the rather cheap horseman upgrade, and you will already have a very formidable force. Other civilizations first have to get to Feudal Age to be able to start making any horsemen out here. Now, of course, these Dark Age horsemen have a limited amount of ranged armor, so the longbows will perform at an acceptable level against them, so you will need those Feudal Age upgrades over here. For now, the fishing ship jumps back into the dock so that it's safe from the damage. This is exactly how LucifroN has to play this one. He has to wait for 2 more horsemen to arrive and then likely get the Feudal Age upgrade to actual horsemen. Khan gets killed here by the longbows and the scout. That's a little problematic over here for LucifroN. The maneuver arrow would have been very useful for those horsemen to be able to catch up with those longbows. For now, fishing ships once again idle. Right decisions being made here by LucifroN as he's coming in with the horseman upgrade. That's exactly where you want to be right now. And he's pushing up with the horseman. He knows very well that the moment the upgrade pops out, he needs to be on top of those longbows. Looks like he's going to retreat actually, as a barracks will be dropped now by VortiX. He's going to have that barracks with spears coming out, so response is needed soon from LucifroN, and that could be a light chunk. One of the problems that the English face on this map, as we'll see the cavalry once again probing the front of VortiX's base. So one of the problems that the English face on this map is that they have a low mobility, which means that it's difficult for them to cross the river. So if LucifroN wants to control the river with a couple of light chunks, he's got all the tools needed for it, and indeed there's a light chunk in the middle crossing. The other 2 crossings are not so significant because it takes a lot of time for the English to walk all around, but if you have some spare resources and if you're afraid of a flanking maneuver from the opponent, you can justify adding some combat vessels to those crossings as well. But the middle crossing is what you want to control, and as I said, behind this one, you're probably thinking about a semi-fast castle, especially built on those fishing ships. Looks like the villager is idle here for a brief moment. Longbows are probably poking away at those fishing ships in the middle. Indeed, they're trying to harass that light junk. They do outrange light junks, but as they get close to the river, the light junk is going to have a ton of firepower. So, once again, the right decisions are being made here by LucifroN. One thing that he could have done in Dark Age before the longbows arrived was a preemptive tower at the other side of the river to prevent those longbows from doing what they are doing right now, because that's a beautiful micro by VortiX. He's delivering volley after volley on top of that light junk, and even though it's being repaired, it's slowly taking damage. And at this point, LucifroN isn't able to retaliate for that. He can't charge him with his cavalry because there are some spearmen nearby. We could see another production building drop by LucifroN, and he's mobbing out some archers. So he's going to try and playing with horsemen archers, and now he's sending the horsemen around. Gotta love that move. He knows very well that he could lose 1 or 2 fishing ships. He got what he wanted out of the fishing eco, and that is a decent amount of food to build his castle age upon. And now he can use those horsemen's mobility to force the opponent away from the water, and that's exactly what he's trying to do right now. Light Junk's still unable to get a single volley out here. He finally gets out 1, but that's just going to be 1 longbowman damaged to like 50% HP. Still, at this point, it's all about controlling this crossing. A new con appears on the battlefield. As you see, LucifroN banking up the resources. Finally, a crossing is made by VortiX, and this is a perfect timing. That light junk was focusing so much on that scout on the right side that the crossing is now made, but this is a double-edged sword, because now you're cut off from your own base, and this is something that LucifroN is realizing. LucifroN realized that he has an opportunity to raid over here, because his opponent's entire army is on the opposite side of the river. And that's exactly what he's leveraging right now. Some spearmen will hold off the horsemen for the time being, and now the longbows will start harassing those gold miners. There goes 1 villager. Behind this one, you see more horsemen being added by LucifroN, so he will delay his castle age here, just so that he can add some more army to defend against this one. If he can pick off the spears, he's going to have no trouble cleaning up those longbows, and he knows that very well. He needs to be careful, however, because those are hardened spearmen. This is an upgrade that the English get for free, and you don't just want to run into those hardened spearmen with your horsemen right now. Another dock has been placed down south over here, and this is going to help a lot for LucifroN to maintain that fishing eco. You see he abandoned this dock right now. Meanwhile, archer number is increasing quite heavily, and with deer stones, they would have an extra mobility as well. Longbows are already quite slow compared to archers, and when the yam speed network is also applied, it allows the archers to dive in very fast, potentially snipe off the spearmen, allow the horsemen to take this fight. Looks like our English player VortiX is about to burn that dock down. There is a ship coming out of that dock. That could be a light junk, and if the spearmen are close to that dock when the light junk pops out, you will lose 3 or 4 of those spears. So this could be great here for LucifroN. You see, that ship is almost completed on that dock, and when that happens, it's going to pop out and it's going to kill the spearman. That's exactly what it has to do. Start killing the spears, because that's the unit that's preventing LucifroN from engaging this one with the horseman. It kills 1 spearman. Nice reaction from VortiX to pull away the spears, set the dock on fire, and then just retreat with the spearman to a safe area. Looks like the light junk will retreat as well. A scout is hidden in that stealth forest for VortiX, which gives him intel on the base of the opponent, and LucifroN is still sort of stuck in this feudal age position. He tried to go for a semi-fast castle, but he's forced to invest so much into his army. Now, on the other side, his opponent is not going into castle age at all, so it's not the end of the world, but still, not necessarily a position that you want to be in if you're LucifroN. You wanted to get to castle, and you can't really do that right now. Longbows still pushing up the river. They do sunk that light junk over there, and with that, there is no water presence right now for LucifroN. He still has a dog down south. Archers now, however, opening up against those spearmen, getting some nice kills over there, and you could see the maneuver arrow being popped as well. The horsemen will run past the first group of spears, second group comes in now. It's going to be a rather even fight over here, but the spearmen are able to touch those horsemen, and that's a lot of damage done by those spears. The Khan is still alive, spearmen still in the party, however, and most of the horsemen are getting cleaned up here. This turned out to be a bad fight over here in the end for LucifroN. His numbers didn't look that promising, but if he was able to kill the spearmen with the archers, the horsemen would have been able to do a lot against those longbows. Now, however, we're looking at 28 army over 10, and I think if the Mongols just went for double archer production the whole time instead of horsemen archers, that would have worked a little better, because it would have been much easier to overrun those longbows, and in that case, the spearman would be completely obsolete. Second archer range is being dropped right now by LucifroN, but he spent most of his stone on double training horsemen and also some archers. He doesn't have a lot of stone to work with, so it's not like he can flood out archers anymore with double training. Also worth noting is the fact that VortiX does have an extra upgrade over his opponent. He does have the ranged attack upgrade, something that his opponent does not have. Ranged defense is right now coming in for LucifroN, but in these fights, That extra attack for VortiX helped tremendously, especially against those horsemen, and the horsemen did not have the range defense upgrade for LucifroN. Down south, there is still a good fishing eco for LucifroN, so part of the reason why his position is still to a certain extent acceptable is because he's got a good food eco, or at least you would think he's got a good food eco, but the reality is that his only source of food is fishing. He's got about 300 food per minute, which is not spectacular if you compare it to VortiX's food eco, and VortiX has no fishing. So the overall verdict is that you likely have no food under the town center of LucifroN anymore, and he's just living off the fishing eco. And indeed, that's the case. Not a single villager gathering sheep or anything like that. There's actually a few, but you only saw one sheep carcass. He probably just placed a pasture as he ran out of food underneath the town center. 2 battering rams added over here by VortiX. He's ready to push the opponent's base. The fishing eco is what is keeping LucifroN alive here. But can he stay alive here against this push? It's 33 army against 23. Numbers are rather even. The villagers can burn down the rams if needed. In fact, they should start burning them down right now, because the longbows aren't really guarding them. Indeed, here comes the villager riot, and the rams seem to be abandoned here by VortiX. Bit of a miss micro, because quite a lot of torches will hit those rams. Now the archers are moving up with the Yam speed network, boosting their speed. Spearmen bracing against the impact of those horsemen. And you see the villagers are used as throwaway units at this point, because you do have the fishing eco to compensate for it. Villagers, not a single one of them lost. They do take down the 2 battering rams. A crucial victory over here for LucifroN. He's able to take down so many of those spearmen as well. Looks like he's going to retreat. He's going to lose his con in the process as well. And what's more important is that this way, VortiX will find the dock down south. And in fact, we do have a galley coming out already. And now this, it could be the final nail in the coffin for LucifroN. He just won a big battle here. But the problem now for him is that his fishing eco is getting absolutely massacred. He's gonna have his dock burned down. And without that, his eco is not spectacular by any means. He's going to try and fight this one, but he has no water presence right now, so that single galley is going to do a lot at just killing that fishing eco, and reinforcements are consistently trickling in for VortiX. VortiX is looking like he's in a great position, and once he starts adding the farming eco of the English, his food eco is going to skyrocket. With 600 food per minute already for him, I'm suspecting that he already started adding some of the farming. Probably not a lot. I would expect 8-9 farms to be the case for him. Second galley coming out, and I do see a third galley potentially coming out of that dock. Fishing ships getting now taken down quite rapidly by those galleys. LucifroN doesn't have a single light chunk to fight this one at this point. And the concerning thing here for him is that he's at 23 army against 40. And this is a problem. When you're the Mongols, you never want to fall behind in army numbers. Galleys finishing off the fishing eco over here, and it looks like we're gonna have a big battle in the middle. Now it's full archers. This is the composition that LucifroN needs to beat this force back over here. A new dock is being placed in the middle, and now with the Yam network boost of the speed, the archers can close the distance between themselves and the longbows. And now you have the ranged attack and defense upgrade as well for LucifroN, boosting his archers. Whereas on the other side, the ranged defense upgrade was not there for VortiX. He's just now researching that. Once again, you're going to have the fishing ships sailing north here, trying to find some safety, but there is none to be found. There is going to be the longbows killing them. Look at that. That's a beautiful move from VortiX, closing the distance before he opens up against those fishing ships. He also picks off the villager building the new dock over here. And it looks like LucifroN taps out. LucifroN taps out. He knows very well that he has nowhere to go with the fishing eco, and he's just struggling to beat back that force of longbows. And in the end, VortiX takes this set in a 3-1 fashion. Convincing play from him. LucifroN had his moments, especially in game number 2 that he has won. That was a great show from LucifroN. But other than that, VortiX seemed to be the more powerful player among the two. And with that, VortiX moves upwards in the Swiss bracket. So he is 1 step away from elimination. Or well, he took a step away from elimination, if I should say. Whereas for LucifroN, now his situation is getting a little more problematic. He's 0-2 in the sets. And as I said, we have 5 rounds of Swiss stage. So you gotta be careful. Out of the 8 players in the main event, you're going to have 6 getting into the playoffs, 2 eliminated in the Swiss stage. Currently, LucifroN is the lowest in the bracket. He is definitely in an elimination position. Not the end of the world, because there is still some redemption to be found. But it's going to be difficult from him now, and he can't afford to lose another set. I think if LucifroN loses another set here, it's going to be game over. So tomorrow is going to be a crucial day for LucifroN, as he's trying to sort of recuperate the losses and get back into the middle parts of the Swiss bracket over here. He's definitely not going to finish on the top now. For him, right now, the name of the game will be avoiding elimination. VortiX definitely took a step towards that. And now he is removing himself from the elimination position for the time being, taking down his brother, LucifroN.